In today's video, I want to answer the question, is Italy's housing market undervalued? Take where I live, for example. In Abruzzo, you can find houses that go for 30,000 euros, 40,000 euros, and 50,000 euros. In London, that might not even be enough to buy you a parking space. So the answer is obvious, right? It's clearly undervalued. But I don't believe it is, necessarily. The question is deeper than that. First, we have to figure out, how do we value a house in the first place?
I'll use the UK as an example, as I'm originally from there. The expectation that property should appreciate is deeply embedded within the British housing culture. Average house prices increased from approximately £95,000 in 2002 to more than £184,000 by 2007, representing growth of around 93% in just 5 years. The rise of foreign investment illustrates how far housing has shifted towards becoming a financial asset. Research from King's Business School estimated that without foreign investment between 2000 and 2014, house prices in England and Wales would have been around 19% lower. The significance of this finding is not simply that overseas buyers pushed prices higher, it is that housing was increasingly being purchased for its investment potential rather than its utility as somewhere to live. Once a house becomes an asset class, its value is influenced not only by local residents seeking shelter, but also by investors seeking returns.
And this perspective matters because it shapes how an Anglophone views buying property when they are abroad. When they arrive in Italy and see houses at a fraction of the price that they are in their respective country, the assumption is that they are a bargain. How would I say it? The instinctive assumption is that the property must be undervalued. However, that's assuming that people are valuing property in the same way, which they are not.
At this point, economics alone may not provide a complete answer. Culture begins to matter. One example of this is foreign buyers often arrive in Italy searching for exactly the things that make the country internationally famous. The medieval streets, stone buildings, historic piazzas, and centuries-old architecture. To many outsiders, these places represent authenticity. They embody a romantic vision of Italian life. Yet many Italians do not necessarily share this preference.
I'm going to call my friend Federico and see if he wants to live in the centro storico dell'Italia. Ciao Fede, come stai?
Ehi, tutto bene, tu?
Sì, tutto a posto. Una domanda per te. Vuoi vivere a centro storico?
Bah, neanche morto, mate.
Oh, he's gone.
The problem is that low prices do not automatically indicate value. In many of these locations, prices are low because demand is weak or non-existent. Populations are shrinking, younger residences have moved away, employment opportunities are limited, rental demand is often minimal, healthcare, transportation, and local services may be declining. Large quantities of inherited housing stock. So after the purchase, the real questions begin. Will you actually use the property? Can it be rented? And if plans change, who will buy it? They also tend to understate renovation constraints, heritage rules, seismic requirements, and the true cost of bringing an old property up to modern standards. Managing contracts from abroad is difficult, rental demand outside a few specific locations is thin, and resale liquidity can be close to zero. Buying is easy, owning is harder, and exiting can be difficult. A €250,000 apartment in a liquid market may be far safer than a €40,000 house in a market with no buyers. The real question is not how cheap is the property, it is why is it this cheap? Understanding that difference is the foundation of any serious real estate decision in Italy. A €30,000 house is not necessarily undervalued, it may simply be accurately valued.
The second layer of the market, I think, is where things get really interesting. And I'm going to call this the middle market. It's not the Italy of €1 homes and ruined properties. It's not the Italy that is competing at a global scale. When you have markets such as Milan and Rome that go for 10,000 euros per square meter, they're not competing with different cities in Italy. They're competing with London, with Paris and Dubai. The middle market, I think, is where things get really interesting, and it's arguably where you can find the value in Italy. It's the Italy where you can still find good services, economy, job opportunities, schools for the kids, and everything that you'd need to live a good life, good quality of life, but at a price compared to Anglophone nations is really, really good. In my last video, I talked about Cassali, and it's a great observation of the middle market. There you can find house prices that go for a market average of 573 euros per square meter. Cassali has all your relevant services, healthcare, schools, functioning economy, good infrastructure with the roads, and beautiful scenery. You've got olive groves, the mountains, and also the sea nearby, all within an hour drive. And housing prices for 100 square meters would be around 57,000 euros. This, for me, is where the topic genuinely becomes quite interesting, because if cheap houses were only found in places that were declining, the answer would be straightforward. But why in functioning communities do you find properties that remain surprisingly affordable?
However, there is a third Italy that sits at the opposite end of the spectrum from the declining village. While the national average property price in 2025 was around 2,100 euros per square meter, markets such as Milan, central Rome, Florence, Lake Como, parts of Tuscany, and the Amalfi Coast operate according to a very different rule. This is why they often appear expensive within Italy itself. When people talk about the Italian housing market, they are frequently describing several entirely different markets that happen to exist within the same country. The result is a form of market inefficiency created not by a lack of information, but by a difference in preferences. The same can appear undervalued to one group, but fairly priced to another. The observations brings us back to the original question. Is the Italian housing market undervalued? In some places, no. A 30,000 house in a depopulating village is often not undervalued at all. The market may be correctly pricing demographic decline, weak demand, and the difficulty of ever finding another buyer. In other places also no. Milan, central Rome, Florence, Lake Como, and the Amalfi Coast already operate as international markets. Their prices reflect global demand. But between those two extremes lies a third Italy, an Italy of functioning towns, active communities, hospitals, schools, infrastructure, and relatively affordable housing. If your definition of value is purely investment returns, the answer remains uncertain. But if value means the relationship between price, quality of life, infrastructure, services, and income, then there is a strong argument that parts of Italy remain among the most undervalued housing markets in Western Europe. Which means that the most interesting conclusion may not be Italy is undervalued. It may be that parts of the English-speaking world have spent so long treating housing as an investment that we've forgotten what housing looks like when it's valued primarily as a place to live.
Well, thank you for getting to this point of the video. If you're interested in more content like this channel will be regularly uploading, and we're talking about the journey of moving to Italy. My argument has always been that if you prepare properly before you arrive, it's going to make the transition easier, and then when you arrive, building that dream that you want. And this channel is to help you get there.